You know what, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Executive Speaks, where we are talking to noted educator, school leader, and author Brian Keith Williams. And tonight's topic is about authentic joy and helping students find authentic joy in a time when, or at a time when, that joy may be hard to find. Brian, welcome. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for inviting me. Excited to be here with you this evening.
And we want this, of course, to always be a talk back. So it doesn't matter what platform you're on, if you're on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, please let us know in the comments where you're from. And if you have questions, add those questions into the chat and we are going to address them. So, I wanted to start right off the bat. You have a lot going on, my friend. You've done some amazing things. I want to first talk about the book, I Am My History. Tell our viewers about this text and about what has gone on with this text since the last time you and I spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. So I Am My History is a children's book that was released in August of 2020. And the book is an affirmational statement to all of our Black and Brown children. It celebrates the creativity and brilliance of our children while also honoring and celebrating the courage and resilience of their ancestors. I wrote the book because I wanted children to recognize their rich history and cultural legacy, but I also wanted them to recognize their connection with their ancestors, that the same tenacity and the same courage and the same resilience and the same creativity that our ancestors possessed, that they also possess, and that blood is running even in their veins. Since we last talked, I Am My History is continuing to make an impact in schools, other kid organizations, just throughout the country, bookstores, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to offer something to our children that raises their history, that raises them, and that really serves as an example of what it is that you can do and achieve when you know that you know that you know your history and no one can tell you differently.
There will be a lot of educators who are going to check us out throughout the course of the week on any number of platforms where this is posted. And what would you say to an educator out there who has a book inside of them that they've wanted to write forever, but they say, I don't have time. I have all these papers to grade. I have all these lessons to plan. I have all this work to do. What advice would you give them in regards to how can they get their book out?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would offer to educators is the comment of, I understand, right? Being an educator, especially in this time, creates a level of stress and anxiety that often does not afford you to do other things, many other things. But I would also share with them that whatever book they have inside of them is so impactful and imperative that it be shared with children that they almost have to prioritize in order to get that book done.
And really, Brian, that kind of goes to anybody out there who has a story to tell, period. Like, not even just, it kind of transcends education. How were you able to find time to write this book and maintain a full-time job and all the other things that you do?
Yeah, so, I think, like I said, I recognized the impact of my book before the book was released. And I think educators have to understand, like, whatever you have inside of you, whatever story you need to tell and share with your children and with the world, you got to be able to feel its impact before it goes out into the world. So because I knew that my book had great impact on the lives of children, I knew that it was imperative for it to be released and published. And so the practical ways that I kind of, itemize the time is creating a deadline and a to-do list for myself and really making sure that I stayed on that to-do list, but also making sure that I created a community around me that would help me be accountable. There were people that were like, hey, did you do this? I know that you said you were going to do this. Did you do this? And so that's also important as you are in that process of writing a book, or just in any process trying to accomplish a goal or a dream or an aspiration. One, having the community around you. Two, understanding how powerful whatever the work is going to be to the world, and allowing that to fuel you. And then three, creating a to-do list and a deadline for yourself that you are intentional about. If you know that your book is going to create impact in the world, then you got to get it done. There's no other way to say it. You got to get it done. And I just knew that this would be impactful. And I just knew that I wanted Black children to have something that they can feel proud about, something that they can recite, something that they can remember. And so I was very intentional about getting it done.
When you look at all of the commentary and all of the feedback that you've gotten about the book, what is one comment that you have heard that has really resonated the most with you, that really just validates all that you poured into I Am My History?
Yeah. I don't know if it was a comment as much as it was an action. There's a school in California that made it a requirement for my book to be used and read throughout their school. And attached to reading the book, the kids created these I am statements. And it was all of the things that they wanted to be and become in the world. The thing that was so impactful is that they sent all of those to me. And I was able to see the children's faces, and I was able to see them holding their I am statements. And I think that was one of the most impactful experiences. I think that just caused me to, feel so proud of the work that I put into the earth, to see that there were children who were using that affirmation that's in I Am My History and using it to create their own positive affirmational statements for themselves and for their lives.
And the book, this process of birthing this creative endeavor, I'm sure gave you joy, which is the focus of tonight's discussion.
Yeah.
And you posted about, joy on Instagram, and it immediately resonated with me. We are living through a time frame in American education, really in American history, where a lot of people are hurting and a lot of people are struggling and a lot of people are suffering through changes and situations that are far beyond their control. And children now more so than many times in history have come into our classrooms seeking and wanting to have and looking for joy. What value do you place in a joyful experience for students? As a school leader, what is the value of joy for your students?
Joy is the center of everything that our students are, will do, and become in life. Hey, Zach. And so joy is right there as the nucleus of everything that we do in our schools. When we think in terms of joy for our children, we recognize that joy is that kind of unspeakable internal feeling that you have that allows you to put away with the limitations, that allows you to just move freely with reckless abandon. And I think joy is the thing that helps our children to become who they are. Joy is the thing that allows them to authentically and unapologetically show up in spaces because they have joy. I think where we are right now in our education system, we have maybe a mad dash to filling the academic gaps that occurred as a result of the pandemic. And many school leaders are really trying to make sure that children are receiving that which they lost because of the pandemic academically, and crunching in and adding so many different academic blocks and spaces and opportunities for children to learn, that they have pushed out those opportunities to just have joy, right? Not recognizing that is the joy that frees our children, not recognizing that is the joy that helps our children to get those academic concepts and understand those academic concepts. They have to be able to have those moments of joy. what I've been able to see throughout different schools in the country, just talking to different colleagues and other school leaders, is that they have built in so much academic time that there's no time for anything else. And now burnout is occurring, not just burnout among our children, but burnout among our teachers, right? So you think about all of these now academic things that are necessary and needed and are happening, but you also think in terms of the trauma that our kids are experiencing because of the, because of the pandemic, and so we think in terms of the trauma, we think of all of the academic pressure that is now on them. They don't have an opportunity to just breathe, right, and have joy. I see somebody put in the chat, what cultivates and encourages joy? The thing that cultivates and encourages joy is educators showing up and providing spaces for kids to be kids, right? Because when a kid has an opportunity to be a child, whether it's through expression, whether it's through recess or play, whether it's through the arts or creativity, that in a real sense is the facilitator of joy.
So having even some level of control over what they learn, just sometimes having agency in the learning process and experience can cause joy for some children. Absolutely.
That's right. So when I, as an educator, show up and my curriculum makes a space for joy, or my curriculum, gives opportunities for kids to share their own thoughts and their own feelings and their own expression and their own creativity, that in a real sense creates or encourages joy. But I can't encourage joy if I'm walking into the classroom and I don't possess it, right? Like I can't encourage it. So I have to come into the classroom space and recognize that I have to be the example of joy, and I have to be the facilitator of joy in order for our children to then have joy and to feel safe and comfortable to have those expressions.
And we're going to talk, Zach Thomas really just asked a great question. I'm going to bring that up, and you literally led right into his question. But before going into that, I don't want to lose this piece of it when you talked about the pressure that teachers and school leaders are feeling from the pandemic. And I really think that you hit the nail on the head about all this pressure around filling in gaps and meeting academic demands is removing a lot of joy from the classroom, because the school leaders are stressed, the teachers are stressed, then the kids feel stressed and they've already felt stressed, and it leads to a level of defeat. But I want to emphasize, what is the urgency? What is the urgency? No child has lost his or her life because they did not master a specific standard. They didn't. But children are losing their lives every day because they don't feel joy. They're taking their lives in mass numbers. And that is an element of education that we're not willing to kind of accept or understand or embrace. And it's a false sense of urgency that has been predicated and pushed down on educators by capitalistic pursuits and notions. And it's time to really find a way to work beyond that so that education can go back to being education again. Now, Zach Thomas said this is the question. How can educators show up when they don't have joy themselves? Now, Brian, what do you say to that?
The real sense is that educators, if you come to the educational space, right, and you do not have joy yourself, you oftentimes run the risk of transferring that to your children. So your children also don't have joy, nor do they have spaces for joy. Now, there is a possible thing for educators to show up from day to day, right, and be bogged down by all of the things and demands of being a teacher, right? And so on this particular day, you may show up and you're not able to give those opportunities or platforms for your children to express or experience joy. But the understanding that your children, in a real sense, have to be able to have that opportunity of expression allows you the space to say, I may not be feeling joy today, but I'm still going to provide a space for my children to experience joy or to express their joy in the day, right? And so that's one piece. But the second piece is, if you're not continuously being focused on your why, if your why is not always in front of you, then what's going to end up happening is that you're going to allow the pressures of education to overtake you. And so if you come to the educational space understanding your why, even if it's something that you have to write down on a mirror or you have to say to yourself before you get out of your car, those are the things that have to be ever before you, so that when you walk into the space, that joy from your why is able to fuel you, even when you perhaps physically or even emotionally don't have the capacity to have it, right? And so one of the things I share is making sure that educators have their why. Example is, at a school that I previously was a school leader at, we gave our teachers an opportunity to write their own mission statements, right? For their teaching, for themselves, for their lives. And those mission statements were put into a frame, and those mission statements were put into the classrooms. So every time they showed up and they didn't have joy, or were frustrated, or didn't want to do the work, they could look at that mission statement, and that mission statement would, in a real sense, remind them of why they're in that educational space. If you're in an educational space and you do not have joy, then you don't need to be in that space. There has to be something that allows you to wake up every single morning, even if that is the joy of seeing your kids or hearing your kids say hello to you every day.
You know, Brian, I think that is profound. I love that idea. We're going to find a way. I'm going to take that, make it a quotable moment. We're going to share it out with the world, because that is a really great way of everyone just being reminded of, in the work environment, why they're there and why they're doing what they're doing. Our world has changed, and there are people in this world who are realizing that the work that they do, it doesn't bring them joy, and they're leaving in mass numbers, and they're moving on with their lives to find joy, because a life without joy is a life that is significantly impaired. I won't say it's not a life worth living, but I will definitely say it's a life that has been significantly lessened because of the lack of joy. And that isn't something we want for our educators, and it's most certainly not something we want for our children. As an educator, I was a public school teacher for 9 years before going into administration, and I had joy in the classroom every single day. I took joy from the content, and I took joy from the kids. I was a really hard teacher. I was probably too strict according to some of the students, but the kids would also say, I laughed more in your class than I laughed anywhere else, because that was just the natural joy of what we did. And I hope that more of our educators can have that. But you also said, if the teacher doesn't feel that, then they shouldn't be in that space. What about the massive teacher shortage that we're currently experiencing? If teachers who are not having joy leave the classroom, who's going to educate our children?
Yeah. I think that is it's a difficult thing to answer, and I think it's difficult because so many of our teachers are leaving the classroom for many different reasons. Some are leaving the classroom because they've realized through the pandemic that they don't have a true heart or passion for this work, right? Some have recognized that they notice and see the inequity that is existing in our education system, and they believe that their work or that their gifts or talents will be best suited in a political space, right? Trying to change and create laws that will recognize and affirm the expertise of educators. So many of them have left because of that reason. And then there are a group of educators who, because of the pressures of being in the pandemic, are leaving because they can't deal with the pressure, right? Many schools have put a lot of pressure on educators. And some schools have put educators in dangerous health conditions and situations, right? And so many of them are leaving for their own mental and emotional wellness and prioritizing their mental stability. And so it's a lot of different reasons that our educators are leaving the school system and education system. So many of those reasons I understand and I get, right? And I'm a proponent for, as you said, living a life and doing things that bring you joy. And if that means that you have to leave a profession in order to find the thing that brings you joy, then I understand that. When we think in terms of who's going to educate our children, right? When the educators leave, or this mass, exodus, if you will, from education. I think that many things. I think that we can begin to rethink education. What does education look like? does education look like you having school every single day? And I might get in trouble for saying that. Like, we have to begin to open up all of these ideas of what's happening. But we also have to start looking at why so many teachers are leaving and being able to address those particular issues, right? And I think that is work that is being done, but that's also work that's not being done enough for us to really begin to address why exactly are teachers leaving. And for those teachers who are leaving because of the conditions that schools and school districts are placing them in, what do we need to do to mobilize and to come together so that we can speak to that structure that is preventing our teachers from showing up with joy, that's preventing our teachers from showing up in general, right, to do this work. So I think it's multi-layered of ways in which we can make sure that there are teachers before our children. One is rethinking what does education look like. Two is addressing some of those systematic and systemic structures that prevent our teachers from showing up as their authentic selves and really having joy in the work that they do. And then last is maybe even going to some of those teacher programs, right, where teachers are beginning to be cultivated and beginning to talk to teachers and preparing teachers for this. I think that every university, at least schools of education, are now going to equip those, newly established educators with the tools that they need to educate in the crisis, right? Because that's never happened before previously, and so perhaps those educators will be more equipped or feel more equipped to be in those spaces because of those education programs that they were a part of.
Too little, too late. That's just like that's just like the mask that will be delivered to my house, and the COVID-19 test that will come after Omicron has already surged and is on a flatline decline. And those 4 tests are going to just sit in the medicine cabinet and expire. Because the Omicron, and that is a major flaw. I have no idea of how to fix it. I have not even a recommendation, Brian, of how to fix it, because that is a continuous problem in education that we're always 2 steps behind the need. And so I agree with you, but it's going to still be 2 steps behind. There will be a whole new need that will exist, and we will be chasing behind it 2 steps back.
And there's already a new need that exists, right? The pandemic just magnified the amount of trauma that our children experience, and it also magnified the holes that exist in that area of responding to that trauma, right? Our teachers are not trauma informed. Our teachers are not trauma responsive. We don't have trauma informed curriculum in the classroom, right? We haven't created the amount of resources necessary to have wraparound counseling services for children and families as a result of a death or losing a loved one during the pandemic, or having to transition, or just being at home and not seeing people on a regular basis. And so we're already kind of in this kind of 2 steps behind, which is why we have to begin to rethink, what does education look like? What does that mean for our children to be educated? You said something before, like, no one has died because they didn't master this particular skill or this particular standard. And the reality is that we are still functioning in the education system for the most part. We're still functioning with those broken lenses, right? But so many new things are happening in education that require us to look at education from a different lens. And so it's important for us as educators, and even for those educators who then move out of teaching in the classroom to working, laws and city council and those things, because they need to be the people to say, those lenses are broken, lenses away, here's how you can look at it in a different way, right? And so maybe a response, and I don't have the full response either, right? But perhaps the response is making sure that we have educators in multiple spaces in education, so that we can, in a real sense, dismantle the things that need to be dismantled, rethink the things that need to be rethought, and then work with teachers in a way that will prepare them to have and be able to deal with the pressures and the rigor of a newly established system of education.
I agree 100%, and it's going to take a lot. And again, that is why I'm a huge proponent of micro influence. I think that the system as a whole is going to be almost impossible to get true reform, but it's something that school leaders can commit to in their buildings, right? As a school leader, you can commit as a school leader to bringing joy into your learning environment. You can commit to cultivating a community of workers and educators and community and faculty and academics who themselves find joy in what they do, and you preserve that joy. In addition, you push and emphasize that joy in the classroom and among your students, and you make that be the priority, and you make that be the known thing. What I want to do, yes.
I'm gonna say real quick, the other thing that has to happen too is school leaders have to understand and prepare for the burnout that is going to come for teachers, right? If you want your children to have joy, you have to, in a real sense, help teachers in prioritizing their mental wellness, right? So if that means, like, for example, our school, we, every Monday after a holiday, we have an asynchronous day, right? And the asynchronous day is by design. It's so that we can, one, give both our boys and our teachers an opportunity to either do the things that they need to do in preparation for the following weeks of school, right? But it also gives them an opportunity to have that joy. If I can do my lesson plans in the comfort of my own home and there's no pressure in the moment, then I have a little bit more joy, right? We also do kind of these Friday asynchronous days as well, which are designed for the same thing. So I think school leaders also have to recognize that the way to infuse joy into the school is not just through students, but it's through teachers. If you yourself as a school leader say, hey, we want to make sure that teachers recognize that we prioritize their wellness just as much as we want them to do, then in a real sense, that joy is going to be shared with the students. So that's another thing that we need to do too. Make sure that we're prioritizing teacher wellness from the school leadership position. We say we do, but then when it comes time for us to say like, oh, everybody's going to be off today, we start kind of like going back and forth like, I don't know if I really want to do that,
So, and I love it. I'm taking great notes, right? Because I think that is so, this will have a greater impact when some of these nuggets are shared out and dissected. So I make these clips. I share the clips throughout the week on the LinkedIn platform. And so we're going to come up with 6 key steps or 6 moves that our schools can do to cultivate joy or maintain joy in the teaching force. And then we're going to come up with 6 moves that can be done to cultivate joy in the classroom. So one thing that you said that I think is loud and clear is that prioritizing teacher wellness and making that a focus is one thing that the learning environment can do to maintain joy among that teaching staff. What's something else that can be done to ensure joy is felt among the faculty?
I think
among the teachers.
Yep. I think the other thing that we can institute when we talk about joy among teachers is giving them the autonomy to include and incorporate the curriculum and the learning materials that they think will be best for their students. When teachers feel like they are a part of what's happening, they have joy. If I can add my own expertise to the conversation, if I can share the things that I am passionate about, then I have more joy, right? Because these are things that are near and dear to me. So I think the second thing is giving teachers the opportunity to include and incorporate their own level of expertise into the instructional day.
I love it. I'm going to even add to that, right? Not just include what they think is best, but include what actually matters to them. Absolutely. As a high school English teacher, I had the autonomy to make selections or to pick books that I loved and share that with my students. And whether or not the students actually liked the book, they understood my passion for it and they saw the joy that I felt around it, and it motivated and inspired some of those students to seek joy in their own reading experience. I think that makes a big difference. So I'm thinking about, this is tough, right? Like, this is tough to really think about, because my brain always goes on multiple levels, like, is it practical? So I want to give because, as we go back and forth, for my first step as to what schools can do to cultivate joy, and that is to ensure that teachers have balance in their life. That to me is the work of a good school leader. You can't allow it. You see a teacher struggling, or you see a teacher who is overwhelmed. You can't look the other way or put the blame on the teacher or expect the teacher to fix the problem. You have to offer a level of support and recommendations as just a good human to help them balance the load. And so often I don't see that. I see leaders blaming teachers for their struggles instead of helping them with their struggles. When you as a school leader see a teacher there at 7 a.m. and see that same teacher leave at 7 p.m., there's a problem in that teacher's life that needs to be addressed. And nobody's addressing it. It may be workload, it may be prioritization, or it may be that the adult is having home struggles that need to be addressed.
And that's why it's so important, as I said, to prioritize the mental wellness. School leaders have to prioritize mental wellness. See, because if school leaders prioritize mental wellness, then that will become embedded into the culture of the school, right? If I myself, as a school leader, value my own mental wellness, because that's something that doesn't happen. School leaders oftentimes value their own mental wellness, and they'll work and work and work until they're burned out as well, right? So the school leader must understand, like, I need to prioritize my own mental wellness so that this therefore can become a part of the culture, and that our teachers, that our children, that our staff, that everybody recognizes that in this school, we champion academic achievement, but we also champion mental wellness. We also champion emotional wellness. We also champion spiritual wellness, right? And understanding like how to be centered. Here's an example. At my school, we recognize that spiritual wellness, and when I say spiritual, I mean being centered with the self, understanding yourself, what you're feeling in the moment, because we recognize that was important, especially dealing with a pandemic where children don't have an opportunity to express how they're feeling about what's happening. When teachers oftentimes don't have the time or the platform to express how they're feeling, we recognize that was an issue. And so as a result, we embedded a mindfulness moment in this instructional day. So every single day, our children, kindergarten through 5th grade, have an opportunity to incorporate a mindful moment. Now, when we say mindfulness, that's like a new thing that everybody's on. But our understanding of mindfulness is giving our children an opportunity to just sit still at times and be in silence. It's giving them an opportunity to think or discuss what they're feeling in the moment. You know, today I'm the advisor for our 5th graders. And today I have sessions twice a month. And today we talked about perseverance. And so prior to talking about perseverance, I hadn't seen them or talked to them basically for the whole week, right? And so here I am showing up on this virtual space because we're at virtual school today. And rather than me start talking about perseverance, I just asked everyone, offer one word of how you're feeling right now. That right there was a mindful moment, because mindfulness is just being mindful and aware of where you are, what you're feeling, so that you can therefore move accordingly and understand or have empathy for how other people are feeling. And so the boys started sharing, tired, anxious, frustrated, upset. It was all kinds of things they were sharing. And rather than me say to them, this is like the wrong thing for you to feel, I gave them the opportunity to say that they were tired or frustrated. And I added mine too. I said, well, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so I brought that up to say that when we, in a real sense, prioritize wellness, that's what it looks like. It looks like not being afraid to alter even the instructional day to incorporate something that is meaningful, something that is imperative, and something that will create and sustain life. And so that's another piece that we oftentimes don't do. So when we talk about like what we talk about what we want teachers to do or this balance, the way to create balance is for you as a school leader to create balance in the school culture, right? If the school culture is, we're going to take off today, or today's an asynchronous day. I love that about my school, that our school leaders said, this is what we're going to do. Every Monday after a break, nobody's coming into school. We don't care when it's during a pandemic, when it's not during a pandemic. On the day after a break, nobody comes into our school building, right? That gives people that opportunity. And so that's something that has to be incorporated as well. So I guess my third one or fourth one, I don't know what number we on, but fourth. So the fourth one would be to not feel afraid to alter the instructional day, to incorporate those moments because mindfulness, being aware, also brings joy. Think about it. If I, in a real sense, am stressed out and I don't get an opportunity to share that I'm stressed out, it's bottled up inside of me, right? If I can at least release it, I feel better, right? So I may have a little bit more joy because I had an opportunity and I had a space to express it. So that fourth one, you cannot be afraid to incorporate in the instructional time those moments for joy.
And Candy wants to say, are you in Atlanta? No, Brian Keith Harris is in the DMV, right, Brian?
Right.
And his work there is in the DMV, but you can learn more, kind of get a background with he has 2 books out. The book that I know and have purchased is I Am My History. What's the first book, Brian?
Yeah, the first book is Freedom's Design, 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings.
And so, Candy, I know you gonna get the books. She always gets the books. She's an avid reader. So it's something that we can talk about and look at and explore. And then we'll talk, Brian, a little bit later about what's coming next. So when I look at the 5th thing, right, as I'm trying to help flesh out 6 things that schools can do to cultivate joy among their faculty, I'm going to say, and it goes back to wellness. I guess that's the overall, you gave us so the whole shift becomes, how do you prioritize wellness? And it really is to make the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is the people. You have to prioritize the people over everything else. And sometimes school leaders are so focused on climbing a career ladder, or so focused on community approval, or so focused on what they think is the right thing to do, that they forget that their teachers are people, and nobody walked into any classroom with the intention or desire to hurt children. Yeah. They may be doing it, right? They may be doing some things that are counterproductive to high quality education, but that's not how the journey began for them. And a good leader leads them to realize what they need to do to improve and be their best selves. Yeah. And that comes by, again, making the main thing the main thing. We can't ever overlook the humanity of the adults we work with, and we have to encourage them to never overlook the humanity of the children that are in front of them. And because consequences are too dire. When school leaders mistreat teachers, those teachers mistreat those students. And it's just a problem across the board. And so that was our 5th thing, is that school leaders must make the main thing the main thing, and the main thing is always the people.
Absolutely. And piggybacking on that for number 6, there is a concept called equity-centered community design. And in a real sense, we think in terms of equity, we think in terms of access, but that model of teaching is giving our children an opportunity to add their own genius and expertise into the conversation, into the curriculum, into the instructional day. That is absolutely something that cultivates and creates joy. If I am an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and I have an opportunity to kind of steer what I'm learning, I have an opportunity to share my own genius about a topic or concept that we're learning, I have an opportunity to share my thoughts about what is being taught, that creates joy. Because in a real sense, joy can also be the shaping of identity, right? And so if I, in a real sense, begin to add my genius, then I look at myself as being a genius. Right? My teacher took my idea, or my teacher heard what I shared. My teacher saw my creativity. And now, as a result of me suggesting this, now we're actually doing this in the classroom. So the ways to cultivate joy in the classroom is give your children an opportunity to not just share their voice, but to also incorporate their own genius and expertise about a concept or topic that matter to them. As we said at the beginning, teachers have an opportunity to incorporate the things that matter to them. We must also give kids an opportunity to share their genius and the things that matter to them as well. That creates joy among our children.
And literally, I wrote down my first thing about what teachers can do to cultivate joy in the classroom as we move to the next, back and forth. And it really would be give children voice and choice, but you just said that. So I'm going to come up and think through something else. And it really comes down to the second thing then that I'm going to add to that. In addition to giving kids voice and choice, or giving them a chance to share their genes and to share their expertise, I'm going to say it is allow students the autonomy to bring their authentic selves into the learning experience in the learning classroom, whoever they are. It is not the place of any adult to stifle any child's creativity or expression of self, even if that expression of self is in some way contrary to you or your spirit or whatever it is that's you. But that's something I think that's going to be very important to it. And I will say my number 2 thing is to allow every child to bring their whole selves to the learning experience.
Yeah, I think that does create joy. I think that it's important, though, that teachers feel comfortable to show up as their authentic selves to the classroom.
That's right.
But then that ties back to the school leader. See, because if the school leader shows up as his or her or their authentic selves, right? Then they create a culture where everybody thinks it's cool for me to be me. Like, it's all right. I'm cool being myself, right? And so that is something that is so pivotal and can be systemic if we don't address it at the school leadership level. That in a real sense, we have to make sure that school leaders show up as their authentic selves and champion authentic expression, unapologetic expression in the classroom, out of the classroom.
Every day. I agree 100%. Cynthia, how you do, my friend, says that, again, your thoughts pair well with Zaretta Hammond's research on responsive teaching. And, it's unfortunate that in this whole pandemic, there's so much great research out there, and there's so many great things that work. And so much of it has not been shared across the United States. Yeah. And so many educators have not been informed about how to handle trauma, how to incorporate the components of social and emotional learning, and really giving kids the strategies and skills they need to grapple with what they face, and what they're dealing with. What would be the third thing that teachers can do to cultivate joy in the classroom?
So I'm gonna share these 2 things, and we can talk. So the stuff is so deep, and this ain't deep what I'm about to share. So I don't want nobody to feel like I'm not like an intelligent man. This is so not deep. Okay. Teachers need to incorporate movement breaks throughout the instructional time, period. Like, put on a song that the kids love and allow them to move, allow them to do whatever they're going to do. Just put on the song. Everybody just rock out to the song throughout the day. That's one thing that you can do to create joy, period. Right? Like, I don't even have anything else to say. There's nothing profound. When kids have an opportunity, when you bring something to kids that is a part of their culture, like, they think it's so cool that you, as the old teacher, and old might be like 30, right? Like, you as the teacher share a song that they're like, how do you know that song, right? That gives them joy, I think that's something important. I'm going to share something else that ain't deep. It's not deep, so I don't want nobody to feel like it's deep. It's not, okay? One of the things that you can do to create joy is create what I call like the Spirit Week kinds of days. We had a Spirit Week for our school, right? Like I think it was November, or it might have been early December. We had Twin Day, and I paired with another student, and it's on my Instagram profile. Yo, Twin Day was so lit. Like, the kids was dressed up like the teachers chose the kid to be dressed up like. Everybody for the whole day had joy. Nobody got in trouble that day. I mean, kids were learning. Nobody was out of their classrooms. None of those things. We just had joy dressing up like each other. And it was even more joy to walk around and be like, oh, Mr. Harris was dressed like this person. Did you see Mr. Williams dressed like this person? So what am I saying? Okay, well, this is virtual. If you say tomorrow we all gonna wear a red hoodie, right? And you show up on a virtual space, everybody got their red hoodie, you take a picture. Those moments like that create joy. So those two things that don't seem as deep become like monumental in your teaching.
And it creates sustainable joy. It creates lifetime memories for those kids. They'll never forget that. They'll be talking about that in middle school, high school, and even in college, right? They'll be talking about those moments. And that is exactly what we want. Candy brings up a really good point. And she said, you can't be uptight. You have to have fun with kids. And that's the whole point. That is the whole point of authentic joy. Good teachers have fun in the classroom. Good teachers have fun.
Good teachers recognize that fun is essential for learning, period. And children and students love those teachers who are fun and exciting. And what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to scroll through because I want y'all to see this picture of me and my 5th grade brother dressed up like twins. You must see this, right? Like, it's that important. And so when we show up to the space and we have fun with what we're doing, right? We're creative with what we're doing. It then opens up and unlocks a space for our kids to feel that same level of creativity and that same level of joy. And they're able to express that joy, right? So I think those are things that, the things we're sharing are kind of, very, very, very fundamental, kind of serious pieces, right? That can bring joy. But there are some less serious things and some low-hanging fruit that you can go to your classroom tomorrow and incorporate that will create joy and change the whole trajectory of your day. So this is my picture that I want to share. I don't know if you guys can see it. Wait a minute.
Yeah, bring it close. Bring it close. There we go. We see it. Look at that.
That twin day thing was lit. I'm telling you, it was lit. And it created so much joy in the school. And they now are saying, okay, are we going to have another day like that? Joy.
And it's something that they can look forward to. And it's something that they can plan. It gives them something to look forward to. It is important. It's a part of human nature to have something to look forward to. It makes your life better. I love that. And I think it's great. I will go to the next thing as we come to number 5. In terms of a way of cultivating joy in the classroom, is that the classroom environment itself should be a joyful place. That's right. And it would be a beautiful thing if teachers had the financial resources given to them on the front end to design a space that would maximize and create optimal joy for their students. But we know that's oftentimes not the reality of our schools. So even though that may not be the reality for you as a teacher, what you can do is make a space or a corner or something in that room that you can continue to reflect on that's going to bring you joy and that will bring those kids joy. That, to me, is a big part of authentic joy for the students in that classroom.
Absolutely. Another piece too is incentives, classroom incentives. That creates so much joy, but that creates a whole nother set of skills that our children need, right? Like that creates good decision skills, that creates relationship skills. When you have like a classroom incentive and everyone is responsible for making sure that everybody meets those requirements, or else they're going to get, a treat, or they don't have to show up virtually that day. Everybody is going to be focused on that. We know from research, we know from our own personal educational experiences that incentives with children is a big joy factor. Children, like you said, look forward to. Children know, listen, if I'm doing this and I'm going to get this as a result of doing this, then that creates instant joy. Now, we know that oftentimes when we say, here's an ultimatum piece, like you're going to get this, you'll get this. We don't want kids to always learn because they're getting something, right? But we do, in a real sense, want to give children a why. Why are we doing this?
They ain't gonna learn that. You know what? I have heard that, Brian, from like really stingy, sorry educators out there that don't want to give kids no pizza party. They don't want kids to have donuts in the morning. They can't expect to get something every time. Nobody, these kids in life for some of our children has given them so little and taken so much. I promise you this, that pizza party that you're doing every month is not going to teach a child you got to get an A to get some pizza. It's not going to do that. You can't give children enough in this world. You can't give them enough.
You can't. And when you make it a collective effort, you can combine a couple of skills in one, right? You can combine joy. You can combine brotherhood or sisterhood. You can combine like decision making, because listen, we all got to make good decisions in order for us to get this pizza party. So now it becomes student accountability or peer accountability. And so one of those ways to create joy is really to create those classroom incentives that in a real sense give children an opportunity to know that there's something coming as a result of what they're doing. That gives them the opportunity to have joy, even though the work is hard, right? I got this homework assignment, but I know when I get done with this homework assignment, listen, we're going to be able to do this, that, and the other. I think one more thing, too, that we did not share. We didn't even share this population of people. I think parents and families are pivotal in this space, because even though we're talking about joy in the classroom must be reinforced by joy at home, right? And we know that that is something that is tricky and rough and slippery space to be, because many of our parents are not providing those opportunities. Quite the opposite, right? But if we can provide opportunities for our parents to know how to institute and implement joy in their homes, then we can be sure that our children will show up to class with that level of joy. One of the things that my school did as a result of the pandemic, we always had, a parent association, but we created a parent engagement program where monthly we had periodic virtual workshops that talk to our parents about like what your son is experiencing right now, how to talk to him about the pandemic, how to do this, how to help him with organization at school, everything from academic to social to emotional to even we had a prayer call for our parents. When we, in a real sense, focus on even making sure that our parents can implement and institute joy in their homes, then that also helps in the classroom as well. And many of our parents regarding their children don't have joy. They don't have joy because they don't feel equipped to support their kids. So when we as a school give them that support and help them, they're able to then have joy and implement joy in their homes.
100%. And that is something that anybody can do with any school and is needed, right? So let's say that you're a parent out there and your school doesn't have that or anything like you think it's a great idea. Start it. Go to the school leader, volunteer to create that, see if you can make it. And absolutely, Sarinthia, take this video clip. It's not only on Facebook, but you probably want to get the YouTube version that you can literally from the YouTube, the 3+1 Media YouTube channel, you can download it. You can splice it, cut it, do whatever you need to do. Feel free to share with anyone that is out there. And again, any parent can do this and be a support to your school. One of our viewers, one of my former students, Lydia, shared a picture. We, had a lot of fun. Where it was called Kurt's Crew 08. So shout out to the class, of 08, because it's about creating a community in that classroom that again extends beyond the classroom. And how are you doing, Deborah? So glad that you could join us. I think that's beautiful. Like that could be a whole discussion in and of itself about how to help parents find joy and how that joy trickles out to their students and how everybody needs it. Everybody deserves it. That is a point of life.
Here's the thing too. Two things. Joy is liberation, right? When I have joy, I'm free. But also this, joy is healing. And so I believe my sister Sarinthia, as you're talking about research for your students, I want you to also, if you're not already familiar with our now ancestor, Malidoma Somé. Malidoma Somé has beautiful books that talk about healing rituals, right? Our African-centered healing rituals. And in those books, we talk about the power of healing, the power of collective and community healing, and all of those things centering and hinging on us being free to express, us understanding our history and cultural legacy. So even as we're doing this research on joy and what it means to be culturally relevant and responsive, what responsive teaching looks like, we also have to add that piece of healing, that the work we're doing is not just helping to make sure our kids are academically prepared. It's not just teaching them social emotional learning, but it is healing them. It is healing them. And so when we look at Dr. Somé's work, we see that piece of healing is pivotal in our children having joy. It's pivotal in them feeling free. And it's pivotal in them recognizing their own beauty and brilliance.
And so I love it. So I want to address, this comment, and I want to break a chain, right? Because here's a reality. I promise you this. In a capitalist culture, yes, it's so money and material driven that I'm afraid you see the rich lifestyle and get tired and start chasing the bag. Ain't no teacher in this world, ain't no teacher in America, Candy, chasing the bag. If you are a teacher in America, you have accepted the reality that you will never have the bag you deserve.
Let me say this.
You can't even get a basic Birkin bag in this country when you are an educator because you are so poorly paid for the time and work that you put into it. I know teachers who worked for a full 30 years and had part-time jobs for the full 30 years who then retire after 30 years of public service and then go back and teach some more because they don't have a livable wage. So it's no educator. The ones who leave are the ones chasing the bag. I'm talking about leave the field altogether. Yeah. Now, on the flip end of it, the capitalistic pursuit is there, but it's not there on the part of teachers. It is there on the part of the policymakers pushing down poor policies on teachers. That is why accountability exists, because they are trying to get quantifiable data and metrics established to pump money into other industries like the assessment industry. It's a whole entire field. So is capitalism a part of the problem? Yes. Is it impacting education? Yes. But can schools and school systems and educators overcome it? Absolutely. By doing the things that we've talked about tonight and really ensuring a focus on the people and not the policies. Yes, Brian.
But even this piece, as it relates to, this capitalistic, experience and approach, right, that is trickling down to educators and, causing our educators to leave the profession because they can't, survive and live. I will say, however, that I think that some of that structure, systemic and systematic structure, has caused many educators to be creative, has caused many educators to look inward and to find other streams of income. Here's what I say. I'm an educator, right? But I also have a dance company. I also have books. I'm not saying that those things were created or done so that I could get money, but I recognized that I had an opportunity to monetize the gifts that I was given as an educator. And what I do believe is that many educators are recognizing their value and their worth, such that there are educators all over this country. You could just go on Instagram right now and see who have monetized their lesson plans, monetize their materials that they're using in the classroom, creating teacher books, creating teacher apparel, and all of these things are based upon their gifts and talents, but they found a way to kind of monetize those things. And so I do think that there is a space for that, and I think that many educators are, in a real sense, focusing a lot on kind of those pieces. But going back to what we said at the very beginning, that we have to have people who leave the profession and go to a space where they are helping to sit at those tables where those laws are being made, helping to sit at a table where, educators continuously come up and are not getting paid what they need to get paid. We have to continuously have people who are advocates for educators who say, no, educators are not getting paid enough. These are the things that need to happen. And so I think it has to happen from both ends.
Agree 100%. And Candy reiterates that, it seems like to me education needs lobbyists or someone political to get the government to dedicate more funding earmarked specifically to the salaries. I agree with that. But even then, I think it's a bigger issue than just, salaries. There are a lot of issues there that need to be addressed. And the fact that in places like the state of Georgia, we can't even have unions for teachers is a part of the bigger issue. And all those things, are present. Brian, we are approaching now the 1 hour mark. So what I want to do, I always like to say, I want to talk about the next project that's coming up, right? Like, so if you're watching and you have not bought I Am My History, you're missing out. You need to get the book. It is a phenomenal book, phenomenal story, extremely empowering, exceptionally encouraging. Love the piece. But you have a new project that will be coming out. I want to talk about that. But before we do that, I always like to end with, what is one question you have for me? So I've asked you all these questions. You get one question for me. Whatever you want.
This is hard. You know, I feel like I'm being put on, but I don't know what question to ask you. Maybe I'll ask this question. Um, what is one way that you um, facilitated joy in the classroom experience that you had? I'm interested in hearing.
Is that I brought my entire self to that learning environment, authentically me every single day. And I made sure that the students knew that, right? Like I did not withhold myself from my students. I had boundaries and they were clear that, I was a teacher and you were the student, but I also made it known that what I thought a teacher was, right? Like a good teacher cares about their students, and a good teacher cares so much so that they're not going to let the lines get blurred. So you may want to joke about this, or you may want to know about this from my personal life, but we're not going to do that because you don't need any more friends. You have a classroom full of friends. You need me to be a teacher, and that's something I'm going to do, and I'm willing to do it for the rest of my life because that's the responsibility of my calling. So now as an adult, I have former students who are friends with me, but they also know that I'm your teacher. And anything that you need in terms of advice, in terms of guidance, in terms of support, I'm going to be here because that is what you do when you are a teacher. So I would say I made my classroom, and again, I think that one of the things that amazes me is that some kids do not remember one book they read in my class, and we read a lot. Some kids don't remember one paper they wrote, and they wrote a lot. But they remember all these funny moments and all these jokes and all these weird moments and facts from my life, like this cat that I had named Peter, that that I wouldn't even remember myself, but that lets me know that authentic me in that classroom cultivated for those kids those moments of joy. And yes, Corinthia, I am going to run for office when I retire. I need to have enough money so that I'm not bought, so that I'm not someone beholden to PACs. I don't want to be someone who gets elected and I'm Kristen Sinema, unable to do the right thing for the people of America because I'm dependent upon money from the Koch brothers. That can't be my reality. So I'm going to run, but it'll be after I retire. And Sabrina, my former students, it was teaching high school English was the best job, the most rewarding job, and the most enjoyable job of my life.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great for us to reflect on that moment, those moments when we have, facilitated joy and fostered joy, because what that does is it encourages us to continue doing those things. And for you, the encouragement is to continue showing up as your, unapologetic, authentic self.
Because everybody knows that's automatically a given.
Yeah. And I think the same thing for me. We mimic that, when you show up as your full self, you give others permission to do the same.
Yeah. So Brian, what is the next project that we have to look forward to that's coming out from you?
Yeah, I have a lot of projects coming up, but I'll just share 3 quick projects. So I started a hoodie line, I Am My History. I shouldn't really call it a line because it's just, just that one saying, I am my history. I just wanted people to not only be able to read the affirmation, but to wear the affirmation and to know, that they're connected to, their ancestors and their cultural legacy. And so have hoodies that are on the website now, briankeitharris.com. So that's one, thing that I'm working on. We also will be sharing, starting tomorrow, a free coloring sheet for all kids who want to affirm that affirmation, that I am my history. And so it's a free downloadable. You can download it, you can color it, you can send a picture and show me, and I'll put it up so everyone can see. So that's one thing for parents. I also have the audio version of I Am My History coming out on February the 1st. And so students and classrooms will be able to hear me say the, words of the book while you're actually reading along with the book. So that's one thing. But one major thing that's happening this summer is I have my 3rd book coming out that's entitled BJ's Dancing Feet. And it's a great story about an 8-year-old little boy who loves to dance, and he is navigating his way through school and learning how to embrace him, his whole self, right? Like understanding, like, listen, this is who I am. I love to dance. And so that's coming out in the summertime.
Amazing. And again, the name of the book is I Am My History, Brian Keith Harris. They can get this. That's right. On your, they get it off your website, correct? As well as Amazon. Which is where I order, but you can get the merchandise and the other elements and other pieces on your website. And the website is BrianKeithHarris.com.
Yes, it's BrianKeithHarris.com. The other thing that I failed to mention is that there is a teaching guide that goes with I Am My History. And so if you want to be able to continue to have conversations with your children about Black history and culture, it has a variety of topics of discussion that you can kind of extend the learning. It has some writing prompts. It has another coloring sheet. It has fill in the blank. It has a crossword puzzle. It has a lot of different things in that teaching guide. So I'm encouraging you all to, when you buy the book, to also purchase the teaching guide.
So another question, Brian, as a school leader, what are you available? Let's say like there's educators out there who watch this and they want to bring you in to talk about authentic joy in the classroom. They want to bring you in and talk about some of the things that you've done as a school leader to set up your faculty for, success around joy. Can they do that?
Absolutely. You can also go to my website, BrianKeithHarris.com. There is a tab that says workshops. You can click on those tabs. You can see the workshops that are listed. You can click register, and then it will take you to an email. You can email me. If you see a workshop that you want that you don't see on the website, you can just email me and say, hey, like, we're asking if you're able to do this. And then I will, quickly respond to you. So that is also on my website under the workshop tab.
Exciting. So, Brian, I appreciate the time that you've taken to share with us today. I'm going to add I've already added you on LinkedIn, which was great. This, of course, is going to be on LinkedIn. I have clips that will promote next week, sharing some of the highlights. I'm going to go through, always find like the top clips, the highlights. I'm going to go through and take our top 6 and find a way to make that some kind of graphic. See, I'm constantly trying to enhance my skills too. I am no graphic artist, right? But, I have Canva. And I'm learning every single day how to do new stuff on that platform. I want to thank everybody who took time out to join us. Brian is a phenomenal educator, always available. DM him. He's super responsive. And again, this book is so great. And I'm really excited to get the new book about these dancing feet. So I'm excited. We'll see how that goes. Sabrina, thank you so much, my love. We haven't spoken since you graduated, but I do have the chance often, Sabrina, I speak to Donald Kirkland, who was your table buddy, back in the day, and Juan Vasquez as well, who's in Panama. So Juan and I talk via DM often as I check on him, but Donald and I are ideologically opposed on everything, politics, but we often chat and discuss some really great issues regarding his boss, Brian Kemp. So it's great that you joined us. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there. So I'll be back next week. And, the first 2 episodes in this run were about teacher retention. This was about teacher joy, and it's going to dovetail into what we're going to talk about next week when I talk to SEL leading national expert Corey Sanchez-Smith about how to incorporate those elements of true social emotional learning and trauma-informed responsiveness into the work that teachers do. So please come back. See you next Thursday. Talk to you soon.
Take care.